Life is a quest for logic and reason. It is a quest to find balance between science and faith. Life is a quest for knowledge and understanding. But most importantly, it's a quest for personal discovery. Whatever your quest, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Welcome to Quest. Hi, Anne. Welcome to the Quest podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, I'm happy you could come out today. I'm excited to get to interview you. I've known you for a little bit now. We've gotten to know each other through some other things, but you were nice enough to want to come on and chat today, particularly about your acting career. And I want to kind of just jump right into that. I was looking up all your credits. You have over a dozen film credits and over a dozen TV credits, which is very respectable for as young as you are. We're going to talk about some of these over the course of the interview. But I want to kind of zero in on one thing right out of the gate. I think every actor or actress's crowning achievement, a validation for their skills, is to win an award. And you are an Emmy Award winner, which I'm so proud of. And you got that for playing a cancer patient in Zac and Mia. So I wanted you to maybe tell the listeners a little bit about, number one, what that project was like, and number two, that validation of receiving a major award like that.
Yeah. I mean, that still is my favorite project I've ever done. I feel like one of the big reasons that I love acting is kind of helping other people either feel less alone by really seeing a character on screen that they can relate to that maybe they don't see in their everyday life. Or in this case, we got to go and just talk to kids and parents of kids that were dealing with cancer. And we went to a few different hospitals, and we even had a few kids that were wanting to be on our show. So they would like get a little part in the show that were dealing with cancer. And it just was very close to home with that going on. Like, I haven't really done a lot of shows that have been able to have that kind of outreach, just because, you know, maybe there wasn't that content going on. But I think that that's what made it really special, is we got close to some of these kids and were able to just make their, day by having them be on set and being an actor for a day, which was really fun.
Yeah.
That role was one of the more challenging roles. It's about two kids that share a wall in between them. So they're like back to back in their individual beds, going through chemo or going through whatever they're going through. And they kind of end up finding each other on social media and bonding, and end up kind of having a love for each other that's really special and kind of brings them out of their funk while dealing with their situations. And it was very fun and challenging to film. I highly recommend going to watch that if you haven't.
Yeah.
And winning an Emmy for that role was, one of the best moments of my life. I'm hoping that it's not the only award that I ever win. I'm hoping that there are many more to come in my acting career. But yeah, it's always very validating to know that your work was seen by other people that can, recognize you and present, an award to you, which is, very exciting. So yeah, I'm very proud of that. And I hope it's, not the only one. I think that there's some really great challenging roles that are in the future.
How young were you when you won that?
I think I was 22, maybe. I think maybe 22 or 23. I'm not quite sure, honestly. Time goes by so fast, and I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know.
I want to ask this because I always hear the most interesting responses. You always hear people, they win a major award and it's like sitting in their bathroom. Where do you keep your Emmy?
No, I keep it in the living room. It's definitely, it has its place for sure. I like seeing it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be inspirational. I want to go back in time a little bit before we talk about some of your other credits. Let's talk about young Anne. You grew up in Texas, right?
Hmm.
Tell me what your young life was like. Were you in a big family? Did you what was it like? Did you know early on you had an interest in wanting to do this kind of thing?
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up in Texas. My mom, my sister, and my dad. And I grew up very religious. Like a big part of my growing up was my mom was a part of the choir or a part of the singing team at like every church we went to. So she was always like up early and we were very involved. And I was always in all the productions, and whether that was like dancing and being like a little ballerina or that was singing a solo. I was always like very involved and wanting to be on stage and being like the center of attention, really. Like even in home videos I watch back and I'm like cringe because I'm so like, let me like give me attention, please. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I definitely knew I wanted to like be um, something that was performative. I did competitive cheerleading for a long time. That was like my life for a while, and I was the flyer, so that was like a way of performing in a way. And then I was never really big into theater. I did theater a little bit in middle school, but I never really loved the idea of being on stage with like a big role because I was just so nervous that I would forget my lines. Like that just overtook me, and there were many times where I did forget my lines. I'll never forget there was one time where I forgot my line, and like we were doing this play of the Underground Railroad, and I was showing like them how to get into this like coffin to hide or something. I don't remember exactly, but I basically forgot my line and just hid in the coffin for the rest of the play, and
Wow.
I was never seen again. So I kind of quit the theater thing, but me and my girlfriend were so obsessed with Hannah Montana. Like that was my idol, Miley Cyrus, Hannah Montana when that first came out. And I just was like, that is me. Like I need to do this, you know? And so there was like a call on the radio or something if you want to be an actress, like Hannah Montana or blah, blah, blah on Disney Channel, like call this number. And so I called, and it turned out to be like this, you know, big competition where everyone from all over the states like audition and then go to LA and perform in front of agents and managers in hopes to be signed and all this stuff. So it was kind of like a big thing that my parents were very skeptical of. Like they were like, this is probably not gonna,
Yeah.
you know, turn out to be your big moment. But the guy who owned this company, it's called iPop, and his name was Ron, and he told my parents that he thought that I had something really special, and that if I didn't get anything out of this, that he would like refund any money that we've paid for the whole like whatever it was.
Yeah.
So that was the only reason that I got to go. And it turned out that I won the award. I won like 4 or 5 awards at this big award ceremony. I won like Best Smile. I won Best Actress, which got signed immediately by like a good agency in LA and management company, and a couple other things. And I was also singing too, which I like to do. So I sang at the competition too and was able to sing and got recognized for that as well. So it was all around like really a great like experience. And that's kind of what set me on the let me take this really seriously and professionally was around then. And I was 13 or 14 years old when I did this. And that's kind of what set it up. And since they were in LA and I was in Texas, I would just travel for pilot season, back when pilot season was actually pilot season.
Mm-hmm.
And I would travel for auditions and things like that all the time to LA. And I would just do school from wherever and just try to, you know, pass. And
Yeah.
I did. I made sure that I finished high school. That was like my biggest thing, because there was a time in high school around my junior year where I had taken so much time off from school, and I was like missing homecoming and missing all the things that I was so important to me at that time, you know. And I wanted to take a year off and kind of decide if I wanted to like do the normal, like I want to go to college and things like that, or if I wanted to pursue acting. And I took that year off and quickly decided that I wanted to pursue acting over going to like a college town with all my friends and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So and then I moved out to LA at 17. So that was kind of the trajectory with the acting, obviously. But I mean, you know, was also a lot of life outside of acting and stuff. But
Yeah.
I don't know if we have that much time.
Was it a culture shock moving to LA at 17?
I mean, yeah, for sure. I think that the biggest thing for me was it was just really hard to make friends. Like I was so used to being, you know, in school and having friends just there every day, and you're forced to go to school, and then moving somewhere where no one knows you, and you don't have like automatic things that you're involved in. You have to like go out of your way to find things to be involved in.
Yeah.
And that was pretty challenging, was making friends. But I had spent so much time there at that time, but by the time I moved, that I was pretty used to like the process of auditioning and the culture of the game, I guess I should say. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. That's incredible. You know, I know when I moved to California, I moved from Indiana, so it was an incredible culture shock for me to move out
My
there.
first movie was in Indiana, actually. So that
we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about Mom and Dad. That's it, right? Well, what did you do? Mom and Dad in Louisville, though, didn't you?
Yeah. No, Indiana was my
It's a
first
different one.
indie film called Sandcastles.
Wow, I didn't know that. I was going to talk about Mom and Dad, but we're going to have to definitely dig into your Indiana shoot too. I was actually in Louisville when that movie was being made, when Mom and Dad was being made.
Oh wow.
I remember when I moved to California, it couldn't be any more different than Indiana. Like the sky was a different color blue. There was no humidity. There was, you know, there were no brick houses. There were no asphalt roofs. Like everything was completely different. And of course, ethnically, Indiana was very black, white at that time. And there was every mix of people in California. So it couldn't have been any more like a polar opposite of what I was used to. So it took me a while to really, to get acclimated to what Southern California was like. That's all incredible. I want to talk about 13 Reasons Why. Incredibly popular Netflix show. You were involved in that, I think, for several seasons. Mm-hmm. Do you feel maybe that was the first show where people started to really recognize you and you were becoming famous, because that show's enormously popular?
Yeah, that was definitely when I got like noticed, for sure. 13 Reasons Why. I was on season 2 through 4, and I got cast in that. I think mainly because I was almost cast as Hannah. So I had done all the process to get cast as Hannah, and then obviously I didn't get it. But a lot of the time, or used to be at least, you get that far, and then if something else kind of comes up that you're right for, then you have a really good shot at getting that. So when the role of Chlöe came around, I think that role was perfect for me. And I'm really grateful I got to be a part of that show. I think it was one of the shows that kind of catapulted the whole mental health movement that like everyone is very much more aware of now, and attuned to that kind of thing, and like how people are, and really asking and really caring about other people and their mental health and their well-being. So I'm glad I got to be a part of that show. And the recognition that came from it. I mean, I went from like Instagram from, I don't know, like 20,000 or something followers to like, I think 1 million within like a week or something like that. It was crazy. And they prepare you for that too. Like we had a lot of social media meetings, and it was very hush hush, and like I was always on Instagram posting selfies, so I would constantly be getting in trouble, like don't post anything. I'm like, even in my trailer, and they're like, even in your trailer you can't post this, and I'm like,
Wow.
okay. So yeah, I definitely got recognized, after that, which was nice.
What we're going to talk about next is the Orville. This is where I noticed you for the first time. Anyone who's a fan of science fiction or Seth MacFarlane will know this show. And I want to talk about that for a moment because, if you weren't already becoming popular, sci-fi is where the fandom really is. Like they're nuts for stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to chat about the Orville. You came on in season 3, which was at the time the last season of the show. I understand they're coming back with a season 4 now, which has been years since season 3 was out. And I will just say, for anyone listening who doesn't want to hear spoilers, probably skip ahead about 6 minutes from this point because there may be spoilers. But the show's been out a while. If they, hey, if you haven't seen it by now, then you deserve to have it spoiled. But you came on in season 3, and this was already an established cast. So I think my first question is really, what was it like stepping onto a set where people have already been working together for years and being kind of the new person in a fairly major role?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of with a lot of things. Like even with 13 Reasons Why, they had all worked on a whole season together and they were very close together. I think that really, at least all the sets that I've been on that have had kind of a close community, like the Orville and stuff, they all welcome you with open arms. It's very welcoming. They're always really excited to have someone new and, just a new face to talk to, like throughout the long days that you're there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was totally great. I totally fit in, and I actually met Jessica, who played Tala, like a while, like when I booked the show, she was like the one who basically told me. We met each other at this Alice and Olivia event in LA, and I was like, hi, or she came up to me, she was like, are you Annie Winters? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, I think you're going to be on our show. And I was like, wait, really? I haven't heard like any sort of confirmation or anything. And she was like, oh, well, I think, yeah, you're already like a part of it and blah, blah, blah. And then sure enough, like 30 minutes later, I get a call from Seth himself, like saying that I booked the role. And I was like, that was fun. So she was like super excited and like, oh my gosh, we have to hang out. Like we need another girl on set and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it was nice. But I also spend a lot of time, like when I'm on set, I tend to spend most of my time like behind the camera or in the green room or watching like anytime I have off, because I do want to direct one day and have my own little production company or produce. And I'm just always very interested in how things are working. So instead of like reading a book or waiting to go back on set, I'm usually kind of involved in just watching how things work behind the scenes and stuff like that.
I had heard that Seth MacFarlane was always a fan of Star Trek: The Next Generation, and this show is very inspired by Star Trek: The Next Generation. Could almost fall into the Star Trek world. It's so close. Mm-hmm. And I think he had maybe Brennan Braga or someone that was working with him on that was part of Next Generation writing team and some of those movies and things. I heard that the show was like really hard to make. Was it a long shoot where the episodes took a while to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we filmed that for, it felt like ever. I mean, I don't even remember when we started filming, but it was, we got about half of the season, maybe a little less than half or half of the season done before COVID hit, really. And then the whole rest of it was filmed after COVID, which I think was like 2 years later or something, like a year and a half. So it felt like a lot longer because of that, obviously. Sure. But yeah, each episode was kind of a mini movie, or not even a mini movie, like an actual full-on movie. with a different scenario. What I loved about the show was each episode was like a completely different show. Like it had its own like world within each episode, which was really fun to film. And each episode would take probably like a movie would take. And it wasn't necessarily for us actors it felt like the hard part. I think it was more for the post-production that was doing all of the CGI and things like that. That's what took a lot of time, because that was a big part of our show, was all of the effects that look incredible.
Yeah, for sure. I heard that show took a long time to shoot an episode. A friend of mine that was on Glee told me that a Glee episode took 3 weeks. Took 3 weeks to shoot one episode of Glee. That it was like incredibly long, painful processes of just getting the musical numbers right. Just, days and days and days working on something that took 4.5 minutes in the show. Mm-hmm. Insane. What was it like working with Seth MacFarlane? He's got a huge fan base, like a genius. TV, film, anything he does is gold. Like, what was that relationship like?
Yeah, no, he's an incredible like human being. I think that he's very clever with how he writes his shows, especially with the Orville, like his way of kind of bringing in real topics in the world that are current events that are happening and kind of making it into a like fictional piece to where people can kind of like maybe see outside of their perspective, because now we're seeing like aliens or like different species and like these made up characters dealing with these things. It kind of is like, oh, okay, well, I didn't look at it like that. You know what I mean? I think he has incredible taste in music, obviously. Like that's a big part of his life and was a big part of the show, was the scoring and making sure that it was all live music and beautiful sounds and things like that. He's just a genius, but he's also a very he's also just a really like nice and generous like human being.
Yeah.
He would have like get-togethers at his house. We became really close as a cast. I mean, I still see him and Scott. I got really close to them too throughout filming. So I still catch up with them. I actually saw Seth this past like 2 weeks ago when I was in LA. So I make sure to see him. But yeah, he's a great person. Everything he touches is gold. He probably wouldn't say that himself. He's a very humble person. He's like, oh gosh, I don't know if this is gonna do as well as I think it would or whatever, but it ends up doing really well. So yeah.
He actually really, I think, captured what Star Trek was really known for. You could have deep topics, but still keep the science fiction light. Mm-hmm. You know, it didn't have to be so gritty and dramatic, but you could still cover important topics, and you can still mix in a little humor and things. Like he created a really nice balance on that show.
Yeah, I think so too. I think also season 3 was his. I'm not gonna say favorite, but I was in it, but you know.
Well, I will say I watched all 3 seasons, right? And I will say 3 is my favorite because of you. Yeah. And I'm going to talk about that in the next question.
But yeah, I think that season 3 was definitely a little less comedic and a little bit more dramatic, and the effects and stuff were taken not more seriously like they weren't, but it was just given. It was more of his like baby project to like really put us all into season 3. So I feel like you really got to see that in that season.
But you can still get Norm Macdonald as a puddle of slime cracking a joke. So that still happened in season 3.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to say, so you have, it's weird with TV, especially. Sometimes there are these parlor tricks where they throw in a new character toward the end of a show and it's, to breathe new life into it. So you get like, growing pains, and you got Leo DiCaprio as a little kid becoming the new little kid in the family, or cousin Oliver in the Brady Bunch. Like sometimes these shows will do this. You got thrown into the mix of a lot of established characters, but unlike those characters that are hated because they know the trick, your character is actually hated in the show. Like, I think people love to hate your character. Um, you came on as what looked like could have been a beloved character, and you turn out to be very much an anti-hero, somewhat of a villain, justifiably. Good and evil are always subject to perception, so you sort of see your point of view. But you became a character that was like, it was so polarizing for the fans. I think they love you as an actress, and then wow, what this character does in the show is madness, right? So I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant that you're a character people love to hate in that show. And so you play the character Charly Burke, and spoilers, you supposedly die at the end. Maybe do we see you die on screen? I can't remember, because I'm wondering if there's a possibility that Charly Burke can come back, because she's sort of redeemed at the end, right?
Yeah, I mean, you see like a close up of my eyeball and then an explosion kind of thing. So, you don't see me get stabbed and like die, but
and the rules, right? If they don't see you die on camera, you may not have died.
Well, also everything is possible in space. You can always like bring back somebody, and there's always the possibility of who knows, someone goes into the room where you can make anything happen, and I just appear. So
you teleported out at the last minute, another ship saved you, whatever. But
yeah.
Is it fair to say, I mean, did I insult you by saying that about your character? It is a character people love to hate, right?
I love being the character that people love to hate, because I think that that's a really challenging role to play. Like I think that characters that are hated are, sometimes like a little one-noted. So to add in those vulnerable moments, and to have like that real person shown where you're like, okay, I do see kind of where they're coming from. Like, they're not a bad person overall. They're just coming from like a skewed perspective. I think it's a really fun thing to play. So I loved it. I loved being able to play the.
And it's a brilliant misdirect, because they cast you, and you're the pretty petite blonde girl, the innocent childish looking face, and then you become something different. And I think actors love the duality of that. Yeah. That had to have been the funnest part of that season.
Yeah, that's Seth really loved the idea of me like kind of looking a certain way, and like he kind of referenced it one time, like Ted. How like Ted is like this little teddy bear, and like everyone thinks he's going to be so sweet, and then he's like this raunchy thing. And he was like, I kind of had the same idea with you and Charlie. Like, you're like, this one look that might be this nice like sweet person, but then you're actually this badass that's like pretty tough and like not going to take any shit. So yeah.
Did you know going into season 3 where it was going to go, or was it a matter of week to week getting the next script and you're like, holy crap, this is where this is going? Did they tell you up front?
I mean, I knew from the get-go what my ending was going to be. Like at the very end, I knew kind of that, but I didn't know the in between really. I just knew what the ending was going to be, mainly, for contracts and things like that, like knowing that it was only going to be probably a season unless it's discussed to go further.
Sure.
But I didn't know what the scenes and what the things were going to be in between. But I really loved how it all played out. I mean, by the time it was COVID, like we had all our scripts. So by that time, after filming like a half of it, we had everything. So by filming like the second half, we knew everything that was going to happen. But yeah.
Did you take home anything from the set?
Yes, I did. I took home my helmet that was like custom made for me towards the end, when like I jump out of the plane and have to do all of the action stuff. I took home that helmet. And they made like a really nice like memory book that they gave us all with photos from everything. And I have some posters of myself in the
That's
garage.
awesome. That's awesome. You said your first movie was in Indiana. Tell me about that. Where in Indiana did that happen?
Oh gosh. I don't know if you named like maybe an airport or something, I would maybe remember. But it was somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Indiana. We were really
That's
close to Amish country.
yeah,
Like
that's Indiana.
I don't know. It was really fun though. So that was the first film that I did. It was an indie that my acting coach, Saxon Trainer, who I still work with today and has been with me through since I was like 14. Um, she was cast in this movie as playing the mom, and she was like, I would love for you to play my daughter. I think that you would be perfect for it. And so she kind of talked to them, and it was kind of more of like a friendly, like indie, everyone knows each other kind of vibe. So
Yeah.
I ended up putting myself on tape for that. And since me and Saxon were working together already, they thought it was a great idea. And I was really grateful because that was like a massive learning experience. I got to spend every day like on set with my acting coach and being able to go through a movie with being able to be with her the whole time, and getting that one-on-one was a really like special experience. So yeah, that movie, and we all stayed like in, I think the one of the guys who was doing the movie, like his mom's house, like that's what he wanted to do it in Indiana, like his home. And so we were all staying in like bunk beds, and like it was a big just sleepover fun every day. That's one thing I love about like indie movies and stuff, is just it's very like community. It's just
Yeah.
they become like your family.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't get that as much. I mean, you still always become like, friends and stuff like that, but you don't necessarily become that close on bigger sets when, the biggest actor is like always busy and like flying everywhere and like can't really hang out or have time to talk to you, or, he's just in his trailer getting things or whatever, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had a lot of fun, and I do love being out like in the middle of nowhere. I think it's really nice and it's very calming. You can stay really focused. I had a blast. I wouldn't live there, but like I
Yeah.
really liked spending time there filming. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember who the director was?
Jordan, or wait, no, Chlöe.
Okay.
Chlöe Rose, I think his last name is. Yeah, Chlöe.
You worked on Mom and Dad, which is sort of a cult classic that was shot in Louisville with Nicolas Cage.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that movie, what you remember of it, and what was your experience like with Nick Cage?
Yeah, the movie was super fun. That goes down in like probably one of my favorite like fun times that I've had, just because there was so much action, and I love getting to like run and roll in the dirt and get dirty and like, be screaming my head off and just madness every day.
I think you might have rolled down the stairs one time too in one of those scenes. I can't remember.
I don't know. I definitely had some bruises though from that film for sure. But filming with Nicolas Cage was really interesting and fun. Like he is exactly like just Nicolas Cage. He is his own being, his own personality, and he is just interesting and like really fun to watch because he's so in it all the time. He's always in character. He is very method, if you will. Like he won't break character throughout the day. So he is always in that headspace, which in this case scenario, like he was wanting to kill me the whole movie. So it was sometimes a little jarring what like off camera, because he would be asking me like questions. I'll never forget on his take when it was like his close up. We weren't filming or anything. We were waiting for the cameras to change, and he was like asking me what I would like my what body part I would like to be cut off first, like, or eaten first. And he's like, would you like your head cut off first, or your arms, or all this stuff? And he was just looking at me like he genuinely wanted to kill me. And I'm like, this is great acting, but like we're not filming right now, and I don't have lines to say back to you that are scripted, and this is just now like making me uncomfortable, but like I'll go with it because whatever helps you get your best take, that kind of thing. So there was some like kind of like what's going on here at times, but I had a blast, and it was really fun to work with him. I think he's a genius.
For the listeners, the premise of the movie is all the parents go crazy and want to kill their kids. That's what it is. I think they used every young actor as an extra they could in Louisville because it's St. X High School where a lot of that was. There were just like so many people I knew in that movie.
That's so funny. Yeah, the extras were great. I mean, they were going at it. They had this one scene where it was all the parents and trying to go and kill their kids on the big football field, and it was full of people, and it was like they were great, you know. So
I think everyone, if you've gotten in the right parts, everyone should have a Nick Cage story. You have a Nick Cage story. Your Hollywood career is complete with a Nick Cage story. You know?
I also want to add, though, that when we went to the TIFF festival, he and Selma Blair, who was playing my mom, who I also got along with really well, and she became a really good friend. But they were kind of set up to do a lot of these interviews without me. And there was a point where Nick Cage was like, I'm not doing any interview without Annie because she was the like star of the film. And so I think it would be ridiculous for me and Selma to be doing these interviews without her. And I thought that was really, really cool. So I joined them on like any interview that I wasn't supposed to be at or whatever. So
when you were working on that, did Selma Blair, was she suffering from MS at that point? Did you recall seeing her like that?
No, she wasn't. That was a few years later. Yeah.
Well, these are all incredible stories, and there's so many other shows we could probably talk about. But I want to move on to a couple other things and kind of change the tone to a little bit more of a serious topic. I'm really happy I've gotten to know you this year and through a lot of last year, and we connected over stuff that was really not related to entertainment at all. But I have to say, when I first really started following you on social media, you were in Bali, and I would watch you post photos from there, and you kept getting thinner and thinner. You were in the midst of an eating disorder that you really weren't aware of. Can we talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And, it was an odd thing to watch this. I didn't know you. I didn't know how to reach out to you or even help you or whatnot. And I remember people would post things all the time. You're getting too thin, and you would respond back and, mind your own business kinds of comments, because you weren't ready to see it for yourself, I think, for a long time. And it was really frightening for me to watch this. Like, you were turning into a skeleton week by week by week. It was really crazy and unnerving and weird to see this person I don't even really know, kind of watching you die on Instagram. And then one day you recognized it and you got treated and you're healthy today from it. Can we talk about that part of your life and what was going on there?
Yeah. Yeah. How do I start this? Because before that, I had also kind of recognized that I had an issue with alcohol. So that kind of started first. Yeah. And I went to... And also there was so much stuff happening too in the industry. Like, there were strikes happening, and work was just not really happening, which I think also led to a lot of issues. Cause you go from, or at least for me, I went from working like so much every day at 2 shows at a time, flying everywhere, like busy all the time, to just like nothing. And it was just kind of, who am I? Like, I don't remember what I like to do outside of acting. Like, acting has become my only thing that I focus on. And if I'm not working, or if I don't have that paycheck coming, like, what am I even doing? So I just was drinking a lot more than usual. And it just kind of became like, why am I doing this every day? I'm just like casually drinking every day. And it wasn't like I was showing up and people were like, oh my gosh, Annie, you are so drunk and you falling all over the place. It was more of like myself. Like, I was keeping to myself, and I was just kind of casually drinking wine all day. And with that was started kind of the eating disorder too. I just wasn't really having an appetite. And then when I would have an appetite, I would I started binging and purging, which was not good. I started reaching out to a therapist, kind of talking to her about it. And really what it came down to was like my will to live at that point was just not like super. I just didn't really care. I was like, well, I don't have anything else to do. So like, why not eat my favorite foods? Yeah, this isn't really the best for me, and drink all day. Like that was like as bleak as I was seeing like the world, you know? So as something needed to change, and it turned out like the alcohol was more of the issue than the eating disorder at that point. So I chose to go and fix that first, because I was at the point where like if I didn't have wine before like 10 a.m. or something, I would start like having withdrawal symptoms. So at that point, the doctor said that I needed to go someplace to where they needed to medically help me so that I wouldn't have any seizures or anything, because it's dangerous to just kind of stop if you're, you know, that addicted to a substance.
Yeah.
So I went to a rehab, and they were kind of concerned about how skinny I was, but I was like, no, like I'm fine. Like I also am never gonna like binge and purge ever again in my life, and I will eat, you know, whatever. So they were a little concerned about it, but then it was more of the alcohol. So I get rid of the alcohol. I do all of this healing there, and through rehab, I feel like a new person. I've gotten rid of toxic relationships. I've realized like so much of my trauma, like trauma healing from growing up. I mean, there was so much that was unpacked in recovery from rehab that I felt like just a new person. And I kind of just disregarded the eating thing. I thought in my mind, if I'm not, you know, binging and purging, then I don't have an eating disorder. So I'm fine. But I also got out of there and just started like going to yoga every single morning, and like on this health kick where I was just drinking like juices and not really eating, and just like eating like really, really healthy, but just not like enough calories. And I was already skinny going into rehab and from before. So it just was like a dwindling thing. Also getting rid of alcohol was like, I think lost a lot of weight as well, like after eating for so long. So I just wasn't really like thinking of it. I was just thinking, well, I'm not doing something that's very bad. So, and I feel so good. Like I was like, you know, after you get rid of alcohol and you're starting like this new leaf, you're like, I feel so good. Like this is amazing, you know? So I just thought if I was sick, or if I needed help, I would feel like low energy. I would feel bad, or something would be wrong. And so I immediately like was like, I'm going to go to Bali and go on this like yoga retreat, because yoga was a big part of rehab. And I felt like that really helped me. And so I got really like addicted to yoga and went to Bali on this like get my yoga certification so I could teach yoga if I wanted to. Probably not going to. That was, you know, just a thought that I had. Maybe I would. But during that time, it was just like, you know, I was just not ready for that, like physically. I was doing yoga all day, every day. I wouldn't really eat, because I was also very neurotic about like eating when I have a lot of stuff to do. So I wouldn't really feel comfortable like having a meal in between going to yoga and doing all this. So I would kind of like not go the day without eating anything, and then eat dinner, and that would be kind of it for the day. And that just kind of became the thing. And yeah, I was definitely like at the wit's end, and seeing people's comments and seeing that. And I noticed like I was pretty skinny, and I was like, okay, well, when I get back, maybe I'll like eat more or whatever, but I can't, because I'm so busy and I'm just having so much fun eating this vegan and like fruits and vegetables and whatever. And I just think I was, I don't know, overlooking it, and also one addiction to another. I think that like when I got rid of alcohol, I just got addicted to like starving and being on that high, because after learning what I learned, you know, during that time in Bali, and when I was like really almost at death's door and didn't realize, like I was on this high that like I felt so good, I felt amazing. And everyone that would tell me that I was not okay, I was like, but I trust my body, and I trust the way that I'm feeling like mentally. And all of that was just like a complete, you know, change because of starvation. Like that's what happens.
Yeah.
So when I, at the very end of Bali, the main thing that happened that was like a big click for me was I started losing my hair. Like when I would brush my hair, I was like, I would see all this hair and I was freaking out. Like, oh my gosh, okay, maybe I do have an issue that I'm not like seeing. Also, your vision is skewed, so you don't see yourself as skinny as you actually are at this point. So anyway, when I got back home from Bali, I got a call from Seth. Actually, he's the one that really helped me with this. And by this time too, like I've gone through the recovery with rehab, and then I did like aftercare and stuff. And all of this help is very expensive. It's all very like hard to get. Like the insurance, everything is very like calculated, and it's not just like I can go in at any time or whatever. So I knew how like difficult it was. And so when I got home, Seth had called me to kind of check up on me. And at that time when he called, I was kind of ready to like say I should go somewhere, because now my hair's falling out. Now it's about my looks. You know what I mean? Like now I'm worried about my hair. So but that was also a sign. But like that's at the time, like that was what I was worried about. But anyway, so he called me and he was like, I just want to let you know if you ever want to go and get help or anything, like I'll help out and I'll like help you find a place and help you financially. And I was like, I think I'm going to take you up on that right now, because I don't really think I'm doing that well. So he got everything set up, and I mean, it was a whole thing though, because I mean, I learned there's not any eating disorder places in the world, or in the US at least, other than Denver Hospital, that has a place for like anorexic patients over the age of 26, I think it is. So basically he flew me out to Denver, and I went to this hospital and stayed there for like a good month. And that's when I realized, like, oh my gosh, I mean, he had a doctor come and check me out, and the doctor was like, you could die like any moment. You need to be at a hospital. And that's when it really hit me. Like I was going to a doctor, which is just crazy. But the doctor that I was going to was like, yeah, you should just maybe eat more protein or whatever. And, I never wanted to know my weight. I've always been like, just don't tell me my weight. That always like made me, I'd never wanted to get into the scale. So I never knew how much I weighed. And then when I went to the hospital and found out how much I weighed, I was like, well, geez, if I would have known I weighed that much, I would have probably been a little freaked out. I didn't know I weighed so little, like alarmingly tiny. But yeah, that was, again, like just another time of surrender to me. Like it was the rehab, and then it was like, okay, I don't got it again, and I'm not okay for this other reason. So let's go back and just redo all of this with just a different thing in mind, which was my eating disorder, which, had its own trauma from childhood and whatever, and a bunch of other things attached to that. So I had therapy and all the treatment catered to that part of me. And, I was so happy to be at the hospital, to be honest. Like it was weird that I was so like happy. I felt like I was finally able to just be taken care of, and like I didn't have to like hold it all together and like feel like I had it all together, which is I think what kind of I was doing. Like, okay, I'm fine, and like I just wasn't. And so kind of surrendering to that and being like, okay, I do need help, and seeing the power in asking for help and accepting help, and knowing that like I don't got this and I'm not as strong as I thought I was in this moment, and really like giving it your all, like felt really right to do. And that the reason, and that also is what kind of led me to want to post my recovery on Instagram, which was a big thing for me, was posting kind of my day to day and just showing people like a glimpse into what it might look like, and not kind of, showing all the drab and like the, the sorry parts and the sad parts of it, but like showing just kind of the normality of it, to show that it's, it's not this thing over here, but it's something that you could do if you're in trouble. And it is a big deal, but it's also not a big deal. Like it's a big thing that you're taking on, but it's also okay. And it's not something that's like so far out that like completely ruins your life and it like changes everything that you've ever worked for. And it's not the ending of whatever that you've imagined your life to be. It's just a bump in the road. It's just a stop along the journey that is actually like fueling your journey. Like I found that after everything, I've become so much more just aware of myself and what's going on around me. I feel like I've built my character and my personality and things that I just feel like I was a little ignorant of before. I'm much more soft-hearted and just a better like person because of it. It gives me like just a really grounded like story. Like I have something that really happened to me, and usually when you go through that, there's like a resurrection on the other side. So I feel like I kind of, resurrected and I'm like now this new person with like a very much more wide perspective of life and how it works. And it also makes me much more confident going into the industry, the entertainment industry, with this new kind of mindset, because I think I'm ready to handle anything. Whereas I think before, if I had let things go and not have stopped to take that time, like who knows what would have happened 10 years down the road without taking this time.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful for everything that happened and where I am.
And we should let the listeners know you've been sober for some time now. You are at a healthy weight. Mm-hmm. You've overcome these things. You've persevered past these problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting what you said about, people don't often step on a scale. Mm-hmm. I had some health problems, quite some time ago. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror and just seeing like my rib cage, and I stood on a scale. I was 119 pounds. I'm 6'2".
Yeah.
I was like, okay, there's something wrong. Yeah. And I knew, but like, you're busy in life. Like how often do you pay attention? And in the mirror, what people don't get is, you don't notice the incremental changes because you look at yourself every day. It's only when you look at a picture that's like 5 years apart that you're like, oh my God, I was like that, where I'm like this now. Like, but every day you just don't notice the small things. And then that's how you see yourself. Your brain programs, okay, yesterday's slide looked like this. I feel like I look the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Also again, too, like with the getting skinnier and your brain not getting enough nutrients, you do genuinely see yourself as a different way. Like you don't see yourself. Like it was interesting, like looking back at photos, because like when I had looked at photos of myself really skinny from before, I was like, yeah, I look skinny, but like I still look like cute. Like I don't look bad, And then looking at them now, I'm like, oh my gosh, like how did I like look at that and see a different image, So it is very mind warping.
It's interesting what happened in Bali too. And a lot of dietitians talk about this in great deal, the green drinks, the smoothies, the fruits, all these things that all this is so good for you. And you can still be suffering from malnutrition by even having a healthy diet. And like they call that something. I'm drawing a blank on what that's called right now.
Orthorexia.
Yeah.
I think
something like that. Yeah. and you believe you're ordering all the right stuff, but you're still missing so much in your diet. You're actually malnourished by eating healthy.
Mhm. Yeah.
It also, was a really tricky time in the acting community because not only it was like a double whammy of problems that sidelined everybody for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
COVID shut everything down for so long. Then strikes, back-to-back strikes, and it's like there were a lot of people that just quit at a certain point. There was like, we may never get back to work. And now in that 4 or 5 years, streaming has become so dominant that that's changed the whole way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
The entire industry's changed. The whole schedule of the way things were done. You talked about pilot season earlier in the interview, and pilot season really doesn't exist like it used to and probably never will again.
Yeah.
And then you compound that with things like what's happening today. Like right now, there's a huge purge of productions that are going to England because England's labor is so cheap. So many things, all the Marvel stuff's moved out of the country. They spent all this time and effort to get it to Georgia, to relocate it to Atlanta, and now, hey, we can make it cheaper if we go to London.
Yeah.
And it's just so, it's really a hard industry to be in. It was always a hard industry to be in, but these things, the kind of the chaos, the wild west that this is right now, makes things even more problematic. And I can see where that might have been triggering for you when you were out of work and probably questioning, will there be a world to come back to, and will there be an industry to come back to? And you start having a glass of wine.
Yeah, exactly. I think a big thing is that I've learned is like finding like, what do I value in life that's not work? What do I value that's not a paycheck? I am more than a paycheck. I am more than a job. I am more than this person like putting on this outfit and whatever. So I like right now with auditioning and stuff, it's just much more laid back because like I know that I'm good and I know that I will work. So I know, but I don't know when. But so this time waiting, I guess, is a lot easier now that I have much more passion in different areas of my life, and I can, go to different aspects of what I love to do. Yeah.
I always like to ask this of my guests, the religion's spiritual aspect of things. That's what my metatomics books are. I'm, known in that world to some extent. And you mentioned, growing up religious.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious in a couple of ways, where was your religion and spirituality throughout this journey? For one, I always hear people, they lose it very fast when they get to LA. Like religion's out the door, you're not in church again. And there's a whole lot of things you're exposed to. Was your religion able to carry you through the tough times in LA? And then where was it at when you were suffering with alcoholism and an eating disorder? Was your spirituality strong? Was it waning? Like, walk me through all this.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good topic because it's I definitely when I first got to LA, I like leaned really far into like the Christianity and religious, like that was how I made friends. I was like, I have to go to church, I have to be involved because that's how I got to make friends. And there was some big churches out in LA that were very popular, and I would say I learned that people go to church not because they believe in God, but they were wanting friends. They wanted to meet people to date. They wanted to be cool, like, and say like, I go to church and I'm this, So it was very much like facade, I think, for a lot of people. So I think it was really after my grandma passed, and my family is very, very religious. They're like pastors and Sunday school teachers and things like that. And I've never really agreed with like how like over the top they are. But I think it really just came down to the simple fact that like, heaven and hell. Like, I don't know if I really believe that so many people that I love that are such good people that are, in my opinion, like much more spiritual than the Christians that I know, and that the Christians that I know that have been not great people to me or in my life are going to heaven just automatically. And that like the people that don't, like, are going to hell. And my grandma's funeral was obviously just everyone being so happy that she was going to heaven because she believed in God and all this stuff. And I was just so like weirded out by that, and it made me question a lot. And I think after that was when I really was like, no, I don't believe that anymore. Like, I don't believe in like the Bible being the only way. I don't believe that there is a heaven and a hell. I've done a lot of like thinking about this, and I've questioned so many people about this. And I think being in Bali, spending time there, was really helpful on my spiritual journey. And just meeting different people that have different beliefs and really like asking them a question and like hearing their points of view, I think has really helped me kind of shape my own, that's still evolving, my own point of view. I just have a much broader perspective of what I think God is. I think, that.
But you're believing in a higher power.
I do believe in a higher power. I do believe that there is like a continuous life that goes on after death. And this is just the like physical human body part of it. And that when you die, that you still go on. And I think that you can like make your afterlife basically whatever you want it to be based off of your time here, based off what you believe. So I feel like, if you do believe that you're just going to go to heaven because you believe in God, like, I don't know, maybe you die and that's where you are in your heaven because that's what you perceive to be as your heaven. But I think that people can create their own like afterlife, and it just, keeps going. It's like a continuous thing. But but to help me with recovery, I definitely feel like my spirituality grew a lot. And I may not have known what I was kind of like praying to, or, but I feel like I was putting out that energy and like seeking something. And I do feel like there is the divine out there. I think that the whole like universe does have a purpose and a structure and whatever, like for everybody. And we're just a part of that, big.
It's not hard to be in a hospital bed and say a prayer. Like, it's a good time. If you haven't been praying in a while, when you're in the hospital bed, it's a good time to probably pick it back up, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be.
I do pray though. Like, I don't say like, dear God or whatever. I pray to divine. I feel like that makes me feel a little bit better. And I think with the whole AA thing and everything, like that was a little challenging with God being so used. And after talking to a lot of people and hearing their points of view about what God is to them and how each person has their own God, every person in AA is like, I have my, your God may not be my God. My God is, to each their own. And that made me feel a lot more like comfortable to really have spirituality, or have even something that I was like praying to or using throughout my journey. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. It must be hard in Texas. I mean, Texas, hardcore Christians, fire and brimstone, Southern Baptists, same deal, that kind of cross that spectrum. That's rough. It's a rough place. I think religion in a lot of ways is a lot lighter in the Midwest and less strict. But when you get into the South, there is definitely a different perspective on it's rigid. You're in heaven or hell.
If you haven't seen The Righteous Gemstones, I feel like that describes my upbringing in church.
For sure. That along with cheerleading and football probably there.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, you recently, just a few weeks ago, you participated in New York Fashion Week. And then I think you went out to California and you did some runway walking out there and some other stuff. How was that? I'm very curious, like, especially with going through an eating disorder and probably being conscious of your body. Was it weird or was it triggering in any way? How did you feel the modeling industry look today? Are they more accepting to body sizes, or did you see someone who was like frail thin and you're like, oh my God, I'm not like that. How was that experience?
Luckily, it wasn't very triggering for me. There wasn't anyone that I was like, whoa, that person reminds me of, where I was or something. When I do see people that are very skinny that look like they really need help, I do feel for them, but I know that if I say something, it's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
I actually have done that with a family member of mine, and it did not go over well at all. So I did it for a friend that's a stylist, and so he had a few people in his show that were kind of friends that weren't like just models. So it was much more like laid back in that way, where I felt like it was more of a, accepting show, I guess I should say. But just in general, I don't think, modeling and walking the runway is going to be like my job or what I want to do. I mean, it was really fun, but it's definitely not what brings me that joy that I get from acting on set. I mean, I felt like a glorified extra, just basically like wear these clothes, walk, and you kind of feel fun, like walking for a minute, and then you get behind stage and it's like you're just a hanger and they're like just trying to put clothes on you and all this stuff. So it was definitely a fun experience. Yeah. But
it's a bucket list item. You cross it off the list. You did it.
Exactly.
Now that you've gone through all of this stuff, you've gained so much, new experience and wisdom in just your, mind, body, and soul in a way in these last 4 years. What's your daily self-care like now? Like how's your day start? I mean, where are you at mental, physical, spiritual? What can you tell the listeners that you do?
Okay. I definitely feel like one of the challenges just in probably anybody's life when you're not working, like, is to set up some sort of like daily schedule or something. So you're not just doing, you don't just get into a rut, So I definitely have things that I like to do every day. I would say I always do a meditation, like a guided meditation. I listen to Insight Timer or Calm, like one of those two apps, something on there every day. I still keep in touch, or not in touch, but I have my appointments with my therapist and my nutritionist once a week. I make sure to get my blood work done once every couple months, make sure everything's good, take supplements if I need them, whatever. So those are just some basic things that are just there. And I'm also, I'm spending time trying to figure out how to create my own way of helping people. So that's takes up my time. I've told you about this, but I have
sort of how we met. This is what we're involved with right now.
I have this idea called the Turtle Club, which I've posted on my Instagram about, but I'm always quick to post, and I always end up being like, why did I do that? Because things that you think are going to happen right away, they just take a lot longer. So yeah, it's been kind of processing for a while now, but basically after recovery and all this stuff that I've done, I just saw there be such a need for community outside of just the recovery center, because so many people get kicked out of these places so fast, and it's just very abrupt. And these people go from going to these recovery centers from like 9 a.m. to 5, and that's like their day. And now they have a structure in their life and it's good. And now like they know they're learning all these things, and then they get kicked out and they're like back to square one because they get depressed again. Like, I don't have any friends. I don't have anything to do today. I don't know what to, like, where do I go? And, I was thinking, where do I go? So I was looking up, like, how do I continue this recovery outside of recovery and meet up with people that are like-minded, or that have like these really helpful groups where you connect with each other and share what's going on, like genuinely, and cry with each other and laugh with each other. And there's like nothing, I don't see really anything out there. And unless you have a really good like core group of friends that are already there, which I feel like is not super common. Like, and in LA, it's very not common. It's very hard still to find friends, and friends are always like going and working somewhere and whatever. So it's very hard to find that kind of community. So I want to create a place where people can go that's like a built-in community where there's therapy offered, where there's group therapies offered, where people can like join in on a group about grief, or an art therapy group where you get to, you know, draw, and music therapy, and different like forms of therapy that I found to be just like fun, and like just it just was fun to like get you out of your head and talk to other people and realize like I'm not alone in thinking this. I feel like that's one of the biggest things that people really need to feel, is like not alone in how they're feeling. And it's just so hard to meet people. So yeah, I'm working on basically bringing this kind of community together. Right now, I was going to do it in Bali. That's why I kind of moved there after recovery for a little bit. And then I got someone in Florida that said that they wanted to start the Turtle Club there. And then, you know, that didn't go the way as planned. And so now I'm planning on making it kind of a website for now, until I find a place that I want to make it an actual brick and mortar. And the purpose of the website is so that it can be for really anyone all over, like an Uber for mental health, where you can type in your zip code, and then you can find like resources of where to go, and different like groups that are happening. Kind of like meetup.com has a lot of those like groups and stuff, but this is more tailored to like mental health. So yoga, sound healings, different places to meet up with people, even like really cool coffee shops that are just like good vibes, that like, you know, people are kind of talking and things like that. So that's what I've been working on. But also a part of my day-to-day is just, I always just make sure to do something for my mind, body, and soul, like every day. So whatever that means, I still go and work out. I make sure to have like my food that day. I make sure I'm spending time in nature at least a little bit of the day, in the sun, you know, like just little things that you don't think about that really like completely change your day.
You recently moved from Florida to Colorado. How have you enjoyed the move?
Mm-hmm. I love it. I had fun in Florida. I love anywhere that I am. I honestly, I can make anywhere a home. I feel like I love the change of pace with really anywhere. So I've been loving Colorado. I think that the people here and the community aspect of Colorado is something that I've really never had, and that I've been wanting, and kind of what I'm trying to create for other places. So it's nice to be surrounded by just really good kind of community where people are always like talking to you, and you can like be walking your dog and someone strikes up a conversation, and you meet people everywhere, and everyone's very nice. And a lot of people are therapists here, and just like, it's a very just homey vibe. And I've been enjoying the snow too. Like I grew up in Texas. I moved to California. I was in Florida. I was in Bali. So being in Colorado with the snow and the mountains is definitely very like fun and new for me.
Yeah, great state. So much scenery in it. And you wait till you get your spring and summer there. You'll really enjoy the
Yeah,
hikes and the mountains and things like that.
I'm excited. I also wanted to bring up too, though, that like I don't want to talk all about my boyfriend, but like I think that from what I've done in life, and like kind of where I was, like it led me to like meet this guy serendipitously, where he's also really involved in mental health, and he's like right now he's like a group leader at an outpatient. So like he would be someone that I was just in a room like being a patient, and now I'm kind of dating someone that's helping people like me, and it just is it's very nice to like be still in that kind of circle.
Yeah.
We get each other in that way. So obviously being in a relationship is good for my mental health if it's a really good relationship, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Annie, it's been a great interview. I really appreciate your time today. I just want to say, I think, I'm really happy to know you for one. You are the definitive definition of dedication and perseverance. What you've achieved as an actress, just continuing with this career that's a very hard one, to win an Emmy, to struggle with your sobriety, with an eating disorder. Again, all things you persevered through, worked hard through. And I think you've shown everyone, including yourself, what you're capable of, what a person is capable of when they put in the hard work and they have the dedication. And now you're moving into being an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't be happier to know you, and it couldn't be performed by a better person. So I'm really happy and proud about that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That means a lot.
Can you tell everyone how can the listeners find you out there on social media and the interwebs?
Yeah, I'm mainly on Instagram, Anne Winters, Anne Winters. And yeah, I haven't been posting like every single day like I used to be, so involved in my Instagram. But I think that, that's one of the things also for mental health is like, if there's not something going on with acting and I'm not posting about it, like I post, you'll get to see like my day to day sometimes, but I'm not like on there like crazy like I used to be. So.
And if there's any fans out there of the Orville, I want to get a letter writing campaign going to Fox now to get Charly Burke to come back. So just drop a letter in the mail, send an email, and demand that Charly Burke come back for season 4 of the Orville.
I have a feeling that she'll be in there at some point.
Going to pop up in one episode and save the day.
Yeah.
I hope so. Anne, it was a pleasure, and let's do this again sometime.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Care.
Metacortex Publishing hopes that you've enjoyed this presentation.
Please take a moment to listen to some other podcast offerings from Metacortex Publishing.
The Danceology podcast interviews the great masters of dance, the working professionals starring in today's most exciting shows, and the rising stars ready to amp up the craft. I'm your host, Edyta Slawenska from Dancing with the Stars. Join me as I dive into the world of dance, uncovering unique stories and the fascinating personalities of industry professionals on Danceology.
Hi, I'm Father Daniel Duplantis, a Catholic priest, martial artist, and host of the Karate Priest podcast. Have you ever wondered what the church teaches about different topics? Are you a martial arts enthusiast or just someone who wants to learn more about martial arts? I'd like to invite you to join me and many guests on my podcast as we cover topics of faith, everyday living, and martial arts on the Karate Priest podcast.
The No Earthly Explanation podcast investigates the things that are unexplainable, hosted by world-renowned investigative researcher Donald R. Schmidt and scientist Ellie Ringo. Follow them as they look for evidence for things that have no earthly explanation. Available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Every year, tennis players from around the world compete for excellence, triumphing against all odds to emerge the champions. I'm your host, Maddie Harrison. Join me as I get up close and personal with these dynamic individuals and find out what it takes to go for greatness. Let's go beyond the match.
Cult Following is a podcast that studies the personalities and common traits of cult leaders and their followers. Get the real story behind these infamous and oftentimes tragic cults from a new perspective, through exhaustive research, and from interviews with people that were there. Available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
everybody, I'm Amber Rose, the religious hippie, and I host the podcast A Catholic's Perspective. Join me every 2 weeks as I release episodes targeted towards helping young Catholics navigate their ever-changing secular world while staying strong in their faith. Whether you are a Catholic or not, all are welcome here. So if this is something that interests you, feel free to tune in. You can find A Catholic's Perspective on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I hope to see you there. Bye!
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Please be sure to rate and review this episode. This podcast is produced by Todd Fischer and Anthony Smith and is distributed by Metacortex Publishing. This podcast is copyright. Any previously trademarked or copyright content is used by permission. Information and opinions stated in this podcast should not be construed as medical advice. Please be sure to visit the official website for Metacortex Publishing at metacortexpublishing.com or find us on social media for other unique content.